Hello, my name is Mohammed Kimji. It will take a while for Zeus to fulfill his promise to Thetis to bring destruction to the Achaeans and give honor to Achilles. But the ball gets rolling in book number 2 when Zeus sends an evil dream to Agamemnon. And the word that has been translated as evil in the Lattimore translation of the Iliad, which is the translation that I'm using, literally means causing destruction. And in the dream that Agamemnon has, Nestor, the elder advisor of the Achaean army, speaks to him. At line number 27, I'm jumping in midway into Nestor's speech to Agamemnon in this dream. Nestor tells Agamemnon, Zeus bids you arm the flowing-haired Achaeans for battle in all haste, since now you might take the wide city of the Trojans. To take it means to sack it. For no longer are the gods who live on Olympus arguing the matter, since Hera forced them all over by her supplication, and evil are in store for the Trojans from Zeus. Now, this is a false dream. By false dream, I mean that Zeus has no intention of giving Troy to the Achaeans. It's a dream that is intended to deceive Agamemnon. After Agamemnon wakes up, he believes that he is, on this very day, going to take the city of Priam. And he doesn't know that the dream is actually an evil dream. But Agamemnon, as a very careful commander, assembles together the highest ranking members of the army. And he holds a council among this small group of kings. And the ancient Greek word for this group is boule. It's really a council of elders that are meeting together before the general assembly, which Agamemnon will call. But that is a different Greek word, ecclesia. Well, once the princes, the kings are gathered together, Agamemnon reports correctly to the boule the dream that he had. And often in the Iliad, what you will find are the very exact same words over the course of an entire passage repeated, almost as though the poet has copied the entire block and pasted the entire block somewhere else. And you will find this often in the Iliad. It could be 5 lines, it could be 10 lines, it could be 15 lines. And the block is exactly the same. Maybe there might be 1 or 2 words different, but it is the same block. And so maybe it's very, it makes the poem much easier to memorize. And in the ancient Greek world, the Iliad was memorized, the entire 24 books, word by word, by a number of people. So Agamemnon reports correctly the dream that he had. And he tells the kings and the princes, the highest ranking members of the army, that he's going to make trial of his men. To make trial means he's going to test them. He says at line number 73 onwards of the Lattimore translation, I will make trial of them by words and tell them even to flee in their benched vessels. Do you take stations here and there to check them with orders? So he's going to test the loyalty of his army by lying to them and by telling them that, in fact, he had a dream, and in the dream, Zeus um, communicated that there is no way that they will ever take the city of Troy and that they should sail home. And this is what he does. An assembly is called, and every soldier is gathered at this assembly. And at the assembly, Agamemnon reports the following. He says at line number 110 onwards, fighting men and friends, O Danaans, henchmen of Ares, god of war. Zeus, son of Cronos, has caught me fast in bitter futility. The ancient Greek word that is translated there as futility is ate. Ate means madness, delusion, blind delusion. He is hard, who before this time promised me and consented that I might sack strong-walled Ilion and sail homeward. Now he has devised a vile deception and bids me go back to Argos in dishonor, having lost many of my people. Such is the way it will be pleasing to Zeus, who is too strong, who before now has broken the crests of many cities and will break them again, since his power is beyond all others. Such an interesting line. Zeus has broken many cities and will break them again, because his power is beyond all others. Having the power entitles one to having the right. Might is right. If one has the power, then one can do what one wants with that power. And in the divine world, you can't challenge Zeus. You can't hold him accountable to anything because Zeus has the strength and the power, and as such, he can do as he pleases. So you don't find Agamemnon complaining about how Zeus uses his strength. Now, Agamemnon here is lying to his men. He says, and this shall be a thing of shame for the men hereafter to be told that so strong, so great a host, an army of Achaeans, carried on and fought in vain a war that was useless against men fewer than they, with no accomplishment shown for it. Since if both sides were to be willing, Achaeans and Trojans, to cut faithful oaths of truce, and both to be numbered, and the Trojans were to be counted by those with homes in the city, while we were to be allotted in tens, we Achaeans, and each one of our tens chose a man of Troy to pour wine for it, still there would be many tens left without a wine steward. What does that mean? Well, Agamemnon is saying that if you were to take 10 of our men and compare it to one man who lives in Troy, and you had a 10-to-1 ratio, even then, the Achaeans outnumber the people of Troy who live in the city of Troy. So they outnumber them more than 10-to-1, and yet they must return home in shame, having failed to make the Trojans pay for what the prince Paris did to the king of Sparta, Menelaus. But Agamemnon says that the Trojans have allies. By so much, he says, I claim we, sons of the Achaeans, outnumber the Trojans more than 10 to 1, those who live in the city. But there are companions, allies, from other cities in their numbers, wielders of the spear, to help them, who drive me back hard again and will not allow me, despite my will, to sack the well-founded stronghold of Ilion. And now 9 years of the mighty Zeus have gone by. This confirms that they are in the 10th year. And the timbers of our ships have rotted away, and the cables are broken, and far away our own wives and our young children are sitting within our halls and wait for us. While still our work here stays forever unfinished as it is. For those for whose sake we came hither, come then, do as I say, let us all be won over. Let us run away with our ships to the beloved land of our fathers, since no longer now shall we capture Troy of the wide ways, which is a lie. Now, the reader sees that the dream that Zeus sent Agamemnon, that he would take the city of Troy very soon, was a deceptive dream. Agamemnon understands, he falls for that deception. He believes that he is going to take Troy that very day. But he reports to his men, the army, general army, that there's no way they can take the city of Troy and they must return home. And Agamemnon's lie is actually closer to the truth at this particular point than his own belief. Well, this plan to test his soldiers actually backfires because the soldiers begin to run to the ships. And they're kicking up clouds of dust as they are running to the ships. And they want to drag the boats into the sea and sail home. Hera, Zeus's wife, tells Athena to intervene. And Athena goes to Odysseus. And she tells Odysseus at line number 179, go now along the host of the Achaeans, give way no longer. Speak to each man in words of gentleness and draw them backward. Nor let them drag down to the salt sea with their oar-swept vessels. Odysseus is Athena is partial to Odysseus. Athena was born from Zeus's head. I mentioned this in a prior video. But Zeus had actually swallowed his wife, Metis, which means cunning intelligence. He had swallowed his wife, Metis, and Athena was born from Zeus's head. This implies that Athena is cunning. This is her mother. And Odysseus, we know, is also cunning. Odysseus is known for his oratorial skills, rhetorical skills, and his ability to persuade and really to maneuver out of very, very difficult situations. So there is an affinity between Athena and Odysseus. And when Odysseus hears Athena's words, he obeys. He tells the kings, or he reminds the kings, that Agamemnon is just testing his men, that Agamemnon doesn't really believe what he has told them. And he tells the kings to check the people, their people, He says, "You do not clearly understand the purpose of a treatise." This is at line number 192. "Now he makes trial, but soon will bear hard on the sons of the Achaeans." And he goes through the army, and eventually the army is brought back together and reconvened. Odysseus then speaks to the soldiers, and he reminds them of a very important moment at the city of Aulis. We know that Aulis is the port city from which the Achaeans sailed to go to Troy. It's where the Achaeans had gathered their ships to go to Troy. And he tells the men, "Be patient, friends." This is at line number 299. "Be patient, friends, and stay a little longer until we know whether Calchas's prophecy is true or not." And he's going to remind the soldiers of an omen that the seer of the Achaean army witnessed at Aulis before the Achaeans had sailed to Troy. And it's an omen that involves a snake and sparrows. 301. "For I remember this thing well in my heart, and you are all witnesses, whom the spirits of death have not carried away from us. Yesterday and before, at Aulis, when the ships of the Achaeans were gathered, bringing disaster to the Trojans and Priam, and we beside a spring and upon the sacred altars were accomplishing complete hecatombs to the immortals." We know that a hecatomb is a sacrifice of a large number of animals, literally 100 cattle, but goats can be involved and other animals. "Under a fair plane tree whence ran the shining of water, there appeared a great sign, a snake, his back blood mottled, a thing of horror cast into the light by the very Olympian, wound its way from under the altar and made toward the plane tree. Thereupon were innocent children, the young of the sparrow, cowering underneath the leaves at the uttermost branch tip. 8 of them, and the mother was the 9th, who bore these children. The snake ate them all after their pitiful screaming, and the mother, crying aloud for her young ones, fluttered about him, and as she shrilled, he caught her by the wing, coiled around her. After he had eaten the sparrow herself with her children, the god who had shown the snake forth made him a monument, striking him into stone." And Calchas clashed out the meaning of this omen, jumping to 326. "As this snake has eaten the sparrow herself with her children, 8 of them, and the mother was the 9th who bore them, so for years as many as this shall we fight in this place, and in the 10th year we shall take the city of the wide ways." So when the snake devours the 8 young sparrows and then devours the mother, and then is turned into stone, Calchas understands that prophecy to mean that it will take 10 years for the city of Troy will fall in the 10th year. The turning of the snake into stone for Calchas meant that the glory of the Achaeans would be immortalized in the 10th year. A stone is something that doesn't change to the naked eye. And so Odysseus reminds the Achaeans of this omen that Calchas interpreted at Aulis. Nestor, at this point, speaks. And we see that while he's an old man, he has no lack of cruelty for vengeance. He says at line number 349, maybe 350, I say to you, the son of all-powerful Kronos promised on that day when we went in our fast-running vessels, we of Argos, carrying blood and death to the Trojans. He flashed lightning on our right, showing signs of favor. Therefore, let no man be urgent to take the wide way homeward until after he has lain in bed with the wife of a Trojan to avenge Helen's longing to escape and her lamentations. Nestor recalls an omen that appeared on that day when the ships left Troy. Zeus had sent lightning, flashed lightning on the right-hand side. Now, typically, omens appear in the Iliad on the right-hand side. Of course, the meaning of right and left is all relative because right now, this is my right, but this is your left as you are looking at me. So the whole meaning of omens of right and left, it can mean its opposite too, depending upon who is speaking or from what vantage point one is understanding what is right and left. But Nestor is here indicating that no one must leave Troy until he has raped the wife of a Trojan to avenge Helen's longing to escape and her lamentations. Another translation reads, payment in full for the groans and shocks of war we have all borne for Helen. This will be the payment for what Paris did. We know that this is what happens when a city is taken. Nestor continues at 357. But if any man is terribly desirous to go home, let him only lay his hands on his well-benched black ship, that before all others he may win death and destruction. Now, not long after this, Agamemnon begins to rally his men. And then sacrifices are offered to the gods. Agamemnon says at line number 412, Zeus, exalted and mightiest, sky-dwelling in the dark mist, let not the sun go down and disappear into darkness until I have hurled headlong the castle of Priam, blazing, and lit the castle gates with the flame's destruction. Not till I have broken at the chest the tunic of Hector, the greatest hero on the Trojan side, torn with the bronze blade, and let many companions about him go down headlong into the dust, teeth gripping the ground soil. He spoke, but none of this would the son of Kronos accomplish, who accepted the victims, the sacrifices, the animals, but piled up the unwished-for hardship. Now, it's going to take a while, again, before Zeus brings to fulfillment his promise to give Achilles honor by destroying the Achaeans. At the beginning of book number 9, we see the catastrophic condition in which the Achaean army finds itself. But it will take some time for that to happen. And by time, I mean time in terms of the narrative of the story. As a matter of fact, very little time passes in chronological time in the war. I've mentioned numerous times that the vast majority of the Iliad covers, again, only a few days of the Trojan War, all 400, 500 pages. Now, when all had made prayer and flung down the scattering barley, these now we'll discuss the rituals that are involved in the sacrifice, and it will resemble very much what we found in book number 1, lines 457 to 461. Now, when all had made prayer and flung down the scattering barley, first they drew back the victim's head, cut his throat, and skinned him, and cut away the meat from the thighs, and wrapped them in fat, making a double fold, and laid shreds of flesh upon them. These might be exactly the same lines that we found in book number 1. Another example of how this poem contains many of the same blocks, almost of narrative, almost as though in your time, in my time, we have somebody cutting and pasting a particular block from one part of the book and putting it in another part. Placing these on sticks, cleft and peeled, they burned them and spitted the vitals and held them over the flame of Hephaestus, the god of fire and the blacksmith god. It works with fire. But when they had burned the thigh pieces and tasted the vitals, they cut all the remainder into pieces and spitted them and roasted all carefully and took off the pieces. Then after they had finished the work and got the feast ready, they feasted. Nor was any man's hunger denied a fair portion. So I think those lines also are found in book number 1, lines 464 to 469. Book number 2, at line number 455 onwards, you find a number of nature analogies that are used to describe the army soldiers coming together. The first nature analogy is beginning again at 455. As obliterating fire lights up a vast forest along the crests of a mountain, and the flare shows far off, so as they marched, from the magnificent bronze the gleam went dazzling all about through the upper air to the heavens. So I guess this is the sunlight that's reflected off the bronze armor. It looks like a devastating fire. That one can see from very, very far away. Second analogy, these as the multitudinous nations of birds. These as the multitudinous nations of birds winged, of geese and of cranes and of swans, long-throated in the Asian meadow, jumping a bit. This way and that way make their flights in the pride of their wings, then settle in clashing swarms, and the whole meadow echoes with them. So of these, the multitudinous tribes from the ships and shelters poured to the plain of Scamandros. Scamandros is a river in Troy. It's where a fair amount of fighting will take place. But here we get, the different soldiers from the different city-states of the Achaean mainland coming together as geese, cranes, and swans, come together in the skies. Maybe during migration or something like that. Another analogy. They took position, this is at line number 467. They took position in the blossoming meadow of Scamandros, thousands of them, as leaves and flowers appear in their season. Now, a simile is a comparison that uses like or as. And this is a simile that is being described where the thousands of soldiers are described here as leaves and flowers that appear, in the spring, blossom in the spring. So the army so far has been described in terms of inanimate nature as fire, in terms of birds, so animals, in terms of plants, leaves and flowers, and now in terms of insects. This is at line number 469. Like the multitudinous nations of swarming insects who drive hither and thither about in the stalls of the sheepfold in the season of spring when the milk splashes in the milk pails. In such numbers the flowing-haired Achaeans stood up through the plain against the Trojans, hearts burning to break them. Now, as you find, swarms of flies, for example, hovering around, buzzing around a milk pail, so the Achaeans are described in much the same way. Here you have, very, very powerful soldiers, extremely strong. Uh, they're very bloodthirsty. They seem highly, highly experienced and trained to kill. And they're described as, insects, flies, or mosquitoes. And it's interesting because, when you think back to the work that we have done on the Bible, the human being is never described in terms of an insect. I can't recall a single instance. The human being is the image of God. The human being is not the image of nature. This is not the first time. This will be, we will find this, and it's not the last time. I mean, I don't know if it's the first time, but it's definitely not the last time. First time in the Iliad, at least. Well, at about line number 484, the poet speaks. Now, this is the poet's own voice. I spoke about the very strange, you can say, nature of the poem that we are reading when right at the opening of the Iliad, in the very first line, the poet ascribes the source of his song to the goddess, the muse, the daughter of Zeus, thus removing himself from the song. The song is transmitted to him. He is a mouthpiece for the song, which comes from the divine. This actually gives him authority. What gives the poet authority is the fact that he has none. The fact that you don't have any mortal element involved in the song. The poet here speaks at line number 484. Tell me now, you muses, the daughters of Zeus, who have your homes on Olympus. For you who are goddesses are there, and you know all things. And we have heard only the rumor of it and know nothing. What does that mean? You goddesses, you know all things, but we mortals, we know nothing. How does the poet know that the gods know all things if the poet speaks in ignorance? What is the nature of that speech? The poet is celebrating the divinity of the goddesses to whom he appeals. But the celebration of the divinity is coming from a mind that doesn't understand itself to have any authority or any knowledge. Who then of those were the chief men and the lords of the Danaans, who were the kings that sailed to Troy? I could not tell over a multitude of them, nor name them, not if I had 10 tongues and 10 mouths, not if I had a voice never to be broken and a heart of bronze within me. Not unless the muses of Olympus, daughters of Zeus of the Aegis, remembered all those who came beneath Ilion. I will tell the lords of the ships and the ships' numbers. So here, again, the poet is indicating that the song that he is singing, this part of the song is the catalogue of ships, where the poet is going to enumerate all the ships that sailed to Troy, where they came from, who the kings of these places were. The poet is appealing to the gods upon whom he depends for the song that he sings. And you as a reader may be asking, why does the poet not ask any questions about the song that he sings or express any thoughts about it or make any critical judgments like the kind that we are making right now? And it's because he can't. Now, what you find from this point onwards is a catalog of the Achaean ships for the majority of the rest of the book. And I just want to briefly go through some of the peoples and the number of ships that come from the city from which these people came. So the Boeotians at line number 494 bring 50 ships. 494, we have the Boeotians, and then you see number 50 is mentioned at 509. I'm not going to mention the line numbers corresponding to everything that I say from now on. But let me just briefly go through the places. Aspledon and Orchomenos, line number 511, they bring 30 ships. People of Phocis, at line number 517, they bring 40 ships. The people of Locris, line number 527, they bring 40 ships. The people of Euboea, line number 534, they bring 40 ships. The people of Athens, line number 546, they bring 50 ships. The people of Salamis, at line number 557, these are Aias's people. They bring 12 ships. The people of Argos, Aias, son of Telamon, the second greatest fighter in the Achaean army. People of Argos, 559, they bring 80 ships. People of Mycenae, at line number, now Argos is, king of Argos is Diomedes, also a very, very powerful fighter, ferocious fighter, effective fighter, as I mentioned in my earlier video. Mycenae is the kingdom of Agamemnon. At line number 569, he brings 100 ships. People of Mycenae brings 100. You'll find the 100 mentioned at 576. Now, that's actually the largest number of ships from any particular place that comes to Troy, 100. Agamemnon contributes the most. People of Lacedaemon, 581, they bring 60 ships. We know that Menelaus is the king of Lacedaemon. Nestor is the king of Pylos, and he brings 90 ships. Pylos at line number 591. People of Arcadia bring 60 ships at line number 603. People of Buprasion at line number 615, they bring 40 ships. Dulichion at line number 625, they bring 40 ships. Kephallania at line number 631, they bring 12 ships. Who are the people of Kephallania? Odysseus's people. A group of islands in the western, off the western coast of Greece. The Aetolians at line number 638, they bring 40 ships. The Cretans at line number 645, they bring 80 ships. At line number 654, the people of Rhodes, they bring 9 ships. Line number 671, people of Cyme, they bring 3 ships. And so on. We don't need to go through the whole thing. Oh, maybe I'll just go through just a couple more, if that much. 683, people of Phthia, these are Achilles' people. 50 ships. It's actually Achilles who brings the ships. It's the kings who bring the ships, not the king is the one who commands. The people are the one who obey. Now, if one goes through this entire catalog of ships as expressed in the near, it's the second half of book number 2, they total 1,186 ships, 1,186 ships. And that catalog comes to an end at 758. And at 760, these then were the leaders and the princes among the Danaans. Tell me then, Muse, who of them was the best and the bravest of the men, and the men's horses, who went with the son of Atreus? Now, what the poet will say at 768 is that Aias, son of Telamon, is the greatest that is left. Achilles has left the battle, and Aias, son of Telamon, is the second best. So at line number 768, among the men, far the best was Telamonian Aias, while Achilles stayed angry, since he was far the best of all of them. Okay, that's confirmation that Aias is second. Achilles, we are told, is still raging at Agamemnon by his ships. I want to look at a passage very close to the end now of book number 2. And here it is the goddess Iris who is speaking to the king Priam. Iris here takes the form of Priam, one of Priam's sons. Very common for the gods to do this, to come to mortals in the appearance or in the guise of someone whom the mortals recognize. But it's really a goddess. At line number maybe 796, "Old sir," Iris tells Priam, "dear to you forever are words beyond number, as once, when there was peace, but stintless war has arisen. In my time I have gone into many battles among men, yet never have I seen a host like this, not one so numerous. These look terribly like leaves or the sands of the seashore as they advance across the plain to fight by the city. Hector, on you beyond all I urge this, to do as I tell you. All about the great city of Priam are many companions, but multitudinous is the speech of the scattered nations. Let each man who is their leader give orders to these men. Now, to say that the languages are multitudinous means that the Trojans they don't have a single language. At the opening of book number 3, we will see that they're described as coming like wildfowl. The Achaeans are silent. They do have a common language. She spoke, nor did Hector. So here, I guess Iris now is speaking to Hector. Initially, she was speaking to Priam. At line number 807, she spoke, nor did Hector fail to mark the word of the goddess. Instantly he broke up the assembly. They ran to their weapons. All the gates were opened, and the people swept through them on foot and with horses, and a clamor shouting rose up. So, I did not mention at the time that the Trojans were holding an assembly. That's actually mentioned a little bit earlier at 788. Now, at this point, the poet speaks about the Trojans, and he doesn't speak very much about them, but he does mention some of the key figures, key men in the Trojan army. Hector is mentioned at 816 as being the leader of the Trojans. Aeneas at line number 820 is mentioned as being the son of Aphrodite. And Pandaros is mentioned at line number 827 as being an archer. And in fact, he is going to be a very, very dangerous archer for the Achaeans. On to book number 3 next. My name is Mohammed Kimji. If you'd like to connect, please contact me on LinkedIn.